Okay, we are back for our last module. This is module 8B. The class is almost done. Congratulations on sticking through it so
Indeed.
far. It's been an interesting experience for us. This is the first time we've done this in an online format, and I hope it has been an interesting experience for you. This isn't going to be a traditional module. There's not going to be a quiz at the end. There's not going to be a bulletin board post at the end. What we want to do is talk about the final paper assignment and sort of talk about our experience grading the last two papers and some of the common mistakes that we saw, and really try to give you as good an idea as possible about what we're expecting. And I'll have Dr. McFall read the assignment, but before he does that, let's just clarify that the papers function very differently in the course than the quizzes or the bulletin board posts. The quizzes are simply there to make sure you've read. They're not designed to be tricky. They're not designed to be deep. They're designed to where if you really read the material and watched the modules, you should get 100% on all of the quizzes. The bulletin board posts aren't even graded per se. They're part of the discussion. They're part of the fact that you're doing the bulletin board posts shows that you're engaged. There aren't right or wrong answers. There's no structure that we expect. The bulletin board posts are showing that you're engaging with the material, whereas the quizzes are just showing that you're reading the material. The papers are designed to measure your critical thinking about the material. And so what we're asking you to do is synthesize and think critically and creatively and come up with something to say that shows that you've thought about the readings and the issues of the course at a higher level than what we're asking you to do for either the bulletin board posts or the quizzes. So they're really measuring a different function. And you want to add anything to that before you read?
So, not specifically, except in the sense that this final paper will ask you to engage very specifically in the three books that you've read since the previous paper, but really is meant to get you thinking that creatively and critically about the themes for the course as a whole, right? So you'll talk about all of the books in one way or another, although you will concentrate your attention on the last three, and in doing so, we trust that you will move beyond the details of the books to come to some kind of creative synthesis of what they mean.
Yeah, in the papers, you need to go further than we go in the discussions. One of the common things that happens in the papers is we hear a lot of what we've said, because that's the safest thing to do. But the A paper, the excellent paper, is going to say things that haven't been part of the course discussions on the bulletin board or in the lecture modules before. It's going to make points that are deeper, that are more interesting, and that are unique to you. So why don't you go ahead and read the assignment?
So I'm going to read parts of it, and then I'll kind of obviously summarize parts of it, right? So this assignment, and this is posted, as you know, starts as we stressed in our final discussion, which really means the final book discussion for the semester, right?
AA.
The craft book is significantly different than the other books we've read. In a thoughtful, well-written, and well-supported essay, identify the common perspectives and characteristics of the first six books of the course. Then discuss how and why Craft's book is different. Right. So 6 to 8 pages. I'm not going to give you a word count, but we expect that there will at least be more than 5 or 6 words on the page.
Yeah, that would be good.
Preferably not 30-point font, preferably not 5-inch margins.
Also, preferably not, 5-point font.
Well, fair enough.
I mean, because there are some of you out there that would do that. The overachievers.
Indeed. Yeah. Due before midnight on Sunday, the 9th of August. That will be something of a challenge for us because our grades are due the 11th, but we will make it work. And so, given that this is the last module, I will just tell you that grades are due at noon on Tuesday, the 11th of August, and within a reasonable bit of margin of error, they'll be done by then.
Or else the provost will get after us.
Yes, indeed. And as I said, discuss all the books. Make sure you concentrate particularly on O'Brien, Clay, and Craft. But really, this is your chance to think about the broad themes of the course and to think about how they all tie together. We've talked on and off in the discussions about how even the very first poems we read reappear both implicitly and explicitly across the books that we've read. Now is your chance to think about what that means for you and what themes and what ties you see bringing these together.
And we could have asked it the other way. We could have asked you how Kraft's book confirms some of the things of this course, and that would have been another paper topic. So we've kind of done half of the setting it up here. We're saying here is Group A, which consists of the first 6 books of the course. Mm-hmm. Group B consists of Kraft's book. It is in some material ways different than any of the other books that we've read. And there are some differences that are categorical that we've talked about. It's the only book written by a woman. Yeah. It's the only book written by somebody with children. Mm-hmm. It's the only book written by a non-combatant who was in the hospital. So, and those are perfectly legitimate things to talk about, but those aren't perspectives. They're what creates the perspective. So you've got to do more. The typical paper that most students write in this situation is going to be something of a 3-part essay where there's kind of an introduction, and then they take those 3 things. Mm-hmm. Well, it's by a woman, it's by a non-combatant, it's by somebody with children, writes a paragraph or 2 on each of those things, and then concludes. And that produces a paper without focus. Yeah. That produces a paper that's really about 3 things instead of about 1 thing. So we want you to go beyond just, here are 3 differences. We want you to actually look at how these differences matter. And so don't say the difference is that it's a woman's perspective. Explain how this being written by a woman changes the perspective of what's seen.
And one place, so we've read these papers that you've written in the past. And one place that comes out is that many of you, not all of you, but many of you are challenged by the fact that we are expecting you to summarize the basic idea of your paper in a sentence or 2 at the very beginning of the paper, right? The technical term for that is a thesis statement, but the simple way of putting it is you ought to be able to tell us in a sentence what you want to say.
What your argument is. Yeah. My paper is about, this is what I'm asserting.
Yeah, so that's an important point, right? We know what your paper is about. And you can say that in the introduction, but that's not a thesis statement. The thesis statement is what you are asserting, what you are claiming from those things that the paper is about.
And it's not necessary to summarize any of the books.
Right.
It's not necessary to summarize the plots. Right. Assume that you're writing to, us. We've read the books. Yep. We know what's there. So you don't have to provide in-depth summaries. We're really looking for you to make arguments and then support those arguments with passages from the text or analyses of the text.
So many of you, if you were amongst the people who are on the same Facebook page as I am, you may have seen an article blow up last week, a couple weeks ago, given when this is going to be aired, about the phrase, in my opinion.
I must not be on your Facebook page.
You must not be, because it blew up. And the claim that this article was making is that in my opinion is a worthless statement and should never really be used in an academic paper. And I don't know if I go quite that far.
But we know it's your opinion.
And in fact, what is critical is you showing us why you believe it, to provide evidence from the texts that explain to us or show us that the claim you're making about the texts seems right. And that's something some of you were challenged with in these first papers too. You would make a very solid claim, and then you'd move on, and you'd never show us why you believe that to be true.
Right. It's a matter of it's better to make a claim that's fairly small and support it really well than a claim that's really broad but that you just sort of dabble in. A really well-focused claim about how the Kraft book is different doesn't have to prove everything. Mm-hmm. It just has to show that you're thinking deeply about one area.
And it has to do that by providing, not by retelling the story, but using the stories to provide evidence for your claim.
So what, Dr. McFall, in your grading of the papers, what are 3 or 4 things that you think people need to do a little better job with on the final paper?
So that's one of the big ones, right? Providing evidence. The other one is crafting a logical progression to the argument where each step is highlighted. So I know you've moved on from that to the next point, to the next point, and that they all connect into some bigger arc rather than being 5 or 6 independent points
That's
that
big
all
with
kind of
me
live
too.
in the same paper.
A paper makes one argument. That argument can have different ways that it's supported, but if you're making 3 or 4 completely separate arguments in your paper, you're not supporting anything at the level that we want you to be supporting it. So ask yourself, what is my one argument in this paper, and then what are the ways that I support that argument? Every paragraph should be supporting that argument.
And one easy way to do this, to check to see whether you're doing this, is either you or your roommate or your partner or whoever you think you can hog tie for a couple minutes. Read the first sentence of every paragraph. Don't read the stuff in the middle. Go through the paper, topic sentence by topic sentence by topic sentence. And if it makes a progression of argument, if you go from step A to B to C to D, and you don't go from A to P to M to Q to A to B, then it's probably going to work.
You know, one thing that I used to do when I was teaching, I used to teach freshman English composition.
Mm-hmm.
I would take a paper and take everybody's name off of it, and then I would cut it up into pieces, and I would rearrange the middle pieces.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the rule was that if the 3 middle paragraphs of a 5-paragraph essay are completely interchangeable, then you haven't done what you need to do to root them in place.
That's right.
And I used to get overheads, and I would have this huge overhead budget because I would just keep cutting them up, and the secretaries were wondering what in the world I was doing. But I was demonstrating to students that their paragraphs were interchangeable because they hadn't rooted anything in place. That every paragraph made just as much sense wherever it was in the paper. So don't do that.
That's right. That's right. And then make sure that the body of each paragraph actually talks about the big idea of the paragraph rather than wandering off. Because I see that, and what I've seen is a lot of really good rough drafts that need a really careful revision process to make it a coherent, linear argument as it goes all the way through.
Right. Anything else that you thought was?
I think they did a lot of things well. I think it's just a matter of kind of doing some of the things we've talked about and deepening the analysis and making it a little bit more.
I think what I saw when I graded the papers is that you really read well, and your papers show that you read the material carefully and that you paid good attention to our lectures, our discussion modules. That's the first 2 big steps: reading and paying attention and showing up. I mean, that's a C right there. But the A paper, the excellent paper, does more than just demonstrate that you've read. It demonstrates that you have seriously contemplated big picture issues, and that you've moved past the most obvious. I mean, there are going to be some really obvious answers here, and if you think of them really quickly, they're probably not good enough for the final paper. I mean, the first few answers that you think of are going to be the first few answers that everybody thinks of, and they're not going to have the depth that we're really expecting in this paper. We want you to learn something in the writing of this paper, and to do that, you've got to go deeper than the first few thoughts that you have.
And that's the really critical thing. The problem for you all with this course is that we deeply care about the material we're teaching.
Yes.
Because if we didn't, it wouldn't be an issue for you.
We like this stuff.
And from your perspective, right, we want you to get something out of this. And one of the things we want you to get out of, aside from all of the kind of social implications and modern cultural implications of what you've read, we really want you to practice thinking. Because whatever you do after you're done in this class is going to involve disciplined thinking. All right, we hope it does anyway.
Yeah, it will.
And you need to get better at it. And that's why we're asking you to do it.
Yeah. Okay, so any other thoughts?
Just thank you very much for all of the time and attention you paid to the course, and have a great rest of the summer.
Thank you very much. Bye.